Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Top 10 players for this NC State program heading into 2024. And as I was stacking these players, something I kind of realized was this might be the most talented NC State program we've seen in the Dave Doeren era. And for NC State fans, that has to absolutely fire you up. You look at Dave Doeren as a head coach, this is one of the best head coaches in terms of maximizing his talent on his roster. And an NC State program that not a lot of college football fans across the country really understand this, but NC State has been one of the most consistent teams, not only in the ACC, but across the country. And now Dave Doeren has the most talented roster, in my opinion, that he's had at NC State. I think this could be a really special season for this NC State program. Fired up for the 2024 season, fired up to get into this top 10 list. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and the amount of support y'all have shown the boys as we've taken deep dives into all of these programs during the summer months. It's been absolutely amazing. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear from the NC State fans in the comment section regarding some players that I maybe left off this list that you think I'm sleeping on. I learned a ton from you guys in the comment section. An NC State program that we're going to be talking a lot about over the next couple of weeks and months. Really excited to get into it. And without further ado, I want to start with a few of my guys that are not necessarily top 10 players on this NC State program right now because we haven't seen a ton of them at the college football level. But all four of these names that you see on this list could certainly be top 10 players for this NC State program. Let's start with two true freshmen that I was absolutely massive fans of both of these kids coming out of high school. You look at a guy in Terrell Anderson, finished up as a top 100 national prospect, a wide receiver that Georgia really wanted to flip from NC State. We just saw Kevin Concepcion take the ACC by storm as a true freshman. You look at Terrell Anderson, you look at a guy like Jonathan Paylor, who might just be one of the most dynamic athletes on this NC State team, a guy that ran a 10.6 in the 100-meter dash, and two guys that inject a ton of playmaking ability onto this offense where you look back at 2023 and outside of Kevin Concepcion, it was a massive problem. I mean, Kevin Concepcion not only led this NC State team in receiving yards by a mile, but was also second in rushing yards next to the quarterback and Brennan Armstrong. And so you look at this NC State team, one of the biggest problems we saw with this program was not enough difference makers on the offensive side of the football. You add two studs from the true freshmen who were coming in. You had a guy in Noah Rogers who's only going into his second year, but was a top 50 national prospect who committed to Ohio State. I look at this NC State team and say the amount of young talent that they're injecting into this offense is going to make this team night and day better from an offensive skill perspective. That's one of my reasons why I'm so high on this NC State team heading into 2024. We saw them win a lot of games as usual in 2023. They get significantly better on the offensive side of the football. Now, getting into our top 10 list, let's start with another one and just quote unquote my guys. And that's Sean Brown, who played exceptional football at the safety position for NC State last year, is going to make that transition to the linebacker spot. And for the longtime listeners, you guys know I am massive fans of safeties transitioning to that linebacker spot. You look at the modern era of college football, you need your linebackers to fly around the field and be athletic. They need to hold up in space, hold up in coverage, tackle running backs in the flat. You look at Sean Brown, we saw the athleticism that he had at the safety spot, but we also saw the physicality that he can play with. I look at him transitioning to that linebacker position and say, I know he can play physical like a linebacker. He has the juice and athleticism to kind of be that Peyton Wilson kind of guy that's just flying around the football, doing so many different things for this NC State defense. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Peyton Wilson, who is one of the best linebackers we saw in the country. I think Sean Brown is going to be a damn good player for NC State in 2024, going up to number 9. And really another reason why I'm really high on this NC State team is this offensive line is extremely experienced. And you look at a guy in Timothy McKay who played right guard and right tackle for NC State, gave up 0 sacks and 490 pass pro opportunities, only 14 quarterback hurries. He's a big body that can move people off the line of scrimmage. Over 2,000 career snaps. I think there's some steps that he can take in 2024, but the raw experience and the versatility that he brings, that's massive for this NC State team. In a very similar note, you're bringing Notre Dame center Zeke Correll, who started the last 2 seasons at Notre Dame, over 2,000 career snaps, once again gave up 0 sacks and almost 300 pass pro opportunities last year. Zeke Correll, Timothy McKay, 2 guys that have played a ton of football at some different spots on the offensive line. This is an extremely experienced offensive line. And you look across the country, not a lot of programs can say that. With this modern era of college football in the transfer portal, there are a lot of Power 5 programs that are trotting out very new, very green offensive linemen. NC State's sitting here saying, hey, we got a lot of offensive linemen that have played a lot of snaps at the college football level, and the development on the offensive line for NC State, some of the best in the country. Moving up to number 7, and let's talk about a guy that very well could be a top 5 player on this NC State team. Former UConn tight end Justin Jolly. And what excites me the most about him, going back and watching some UConn games, is one, he led this program in receiving yards last year at UConn. In so many ways that you can get him involved in the offense. He can be an inline tight end. You want to see him take some steps and potentially run blocking at that tight end position, but he's a guy that you can split out wide. You can get in the flat. You can use as an H-back. His best asset that he has is what he can do after the catch. And this is a guy that had 20 missed tackles forced, over 350 yards after the catch. If you want to put a linebacker on him, he is way too athletic for linebackers to deal with. You want to put a smaller defensive back on him, this is a guy that goes over 230 pounds. He is a very fluid pass catcher. And again, we talked about NC State just not having enough playmakers on the offensive side of the football. You get a guy in Justin Jolly who can do so many different things, whether he's playing in the slot, whether he's playing as an H-back, get the football into his hands, and he's going to be a guy that's making plays for this NC State offense. Going up to number 6, let's talk about another injection of offensive playmaking. Running back Jordan Waters, coming from Duke. You take a look at last year, played phenomenal football for this Duke program, over 800 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns, averaged 5.5 yards per carry. He's a running back that runs the rock extremely hard. And you look back at NC State in that running back room last year, they just did not have a guy. And to put it quite frankly, they didn't have an ACC caliber running back. You look at Jordan Waters, one of the better running backs in the ACC, now joining this NC State team. You're bringing Hollywood Smothers from Oklahoma. I look at this running back room and say, massive upgrade from what you had in 2023 as well. Going into our top 5 players for this NC State team. And let's start off with another offensive lineman in Anthony Belton, who very well could be the highest draft pick in 2025's draft class for this NC State program. And Anthony Belton's getting a lot of buzz as potentially a first-round caliber offensive tackle, and quite frankly, for good reason. This was a guy that started every single game at left tackle for NC State. And what excites you the most about Anthony Belton is you see the flashes. The top play for Anthony Belton is one of the better tackles in the ACC. Yes, he needs to clean up some consistency, sometimes got over his skis at times. What excites you the most is over 1,500 snaps played at that left tackle position, a guy that has a ton of experience at the left tackle spot, and the ceiling is so high for Anthony Belton. There's a reason that some people see him as a first-round caliber offensive tackle, because the flashes that you see are extremely special. If this kid puts it together for all 12-plus games, you're looking at one of the better tackles in the ACC heading into 2024, another big-time offensive lineman for NC State. Number 4, and for the NC State fans who've been listening during the spring, we talked about Grayson McCall when he committed to NC State. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks in the transfer portal. And I think a lot of people, because he came from Coastal Carolina, kind of overlooked this move. You just can't argue with not only the raw production that Grayson McCall had, but I think the favorite stat to mention with Grayson McCall is he's 38-10 as a starter. You look at that Coastal Carolina team, why they won so many conference championships and had so much success. It was largely on the shoulders of a guy like Grayson McCall. So he's not only a proven winner, but he comes to NC State being one of the most productive quarterbacks that you see across the country. Over 10,000 yards, 88 touchdowns to only 14 interceptions, a 70% completion percentage, can get it done with his legs with over 1,100 rushing yards. I am just a massive fan of Grayson McCall. And does he have the premier NFL arm talent that you see some other quarterbacks have heading into 2024? Probably not. But this is a guy that is going to get the football out on time, accurately, to the places it needs to go. And Grayson McCall is one of the best pure college football quarterbacks that was available in the transfer portal. In my opinion, going to be a massive upgrade from what we saw with this NC State program in the 2023 season. Going into our top three players, let's start with just the do-it-all defensive lineman, Davin Vann, who's been a staple in this NC State defense for multiple years. 7 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks in the 2023 season. He was second on the team with 23 quarterback carries. He was top 5 on the team with 15 run stops, has played over 1,600 snaps during his career. And I think my favorite aspect about Davin Vann is he just plays everywhere along the defensive line. And you kind of look at what Tony Gibson wants to do on the defensive side of the football. It's a lot of different looks. It's a lot of different packages. When you have a defensive lineman that you can kind of move all around the defensive line, that's absolutely massive for this NC State team. I think Davin Vann, one of the better defensive linemen in the ACC, fits exactly what Tony Gibson wants to do heading into 2024. Going up to our top 2 players, let's start with, quite frankly, cornerback that I don't know why he's not in the NFL. I know the NC State fans are certainly not complaining about Aiden White coming back to NC State for one more year. This kid's been one of the best cornerbacks in the country for the last couple of years. You take a look at last year, a 7.3% missed tackle rate. Exceptional number for a cornerback that's asked to play on islands and make a lot of tackles in space. 52% completion percentage when targeted on 65 targets. 10 pass breakups. Aiden White is a long physical corner. And again, Tony Gibson wants to leave these cornerbacks on islands, walk safeties into the box. When you have a cornerback like Aiden White, that is exactly what Tony Gibson needs to run his defense the right way. One of the best cornerbacks in the country, and going to our number 1 player and largely one of the better players in the ACC, Kevin Concepcion. This kid was the do-it-all freshman for NC State, a guy that generated some buzz out of high school, especially with NC State fans, but kind of nationally was kind of flying under the radar. And Kevin Concepcion just did everything for NC State. He led this program in receiving yards with over 830 yards, 10 touchdowns, also had 41 carries for 320 yards. It got to the point in this NC State season in 2023 where, hey, we're just going to let Kevin Concepcion get the football in his hands and let good things happen. I think you're going to even see potentially even better production from Kevin Concepcion because he's got more talent on the offensive side of the football. Like, if you're an opposing defense going to play NC State, there was one guy you had to game plan around in the offensive skill position. That was Kevin Concepcion. Now you have Noah Rogers, Justin Jolly, Jordan Waters in the backfield, a lot more capable bodies for defenses to have to pay attention to. That might give Kevin Concepcion a little bit more opportunity to be that playmaker for NC State. Love this kid. Love this NC State program. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.